you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, yeah.
So how are things going? You must be happy and nervous and relieved about the new album.
Oh, I'm very happy about the new album. Yeah. I knew when I got it wasn't until I really got the last set of mixes from Rich that I thought, oh yes, God has come through one more time.
Well, I'll tell you, I took a good long listen, and seriously, a long listen. This is a beast of an album. You're
Yes.
clocking in at what, almost 2 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after I picked my jaw up off the floor, this is something special.
Oh, thank you.
I kept thinking, as I'm listening to this thing, I kept thinking, how the heck do you write this kind of stuff? There's so much going on in every song. There's so many different styles. Take us through the writing process for something like this, because it is very intricate stuff.
Well, it's like everybody in the band has a different role, because it's really interesting how, of course, being a believer in the Lord, for me, it's like how God orchestrates this thing using all these different people and all these different personalities. It's kind of like, or one way to put it would be, it's like we all the guys in the band got a certain piece of the puzzle. Like there's this mosaic that God wants to create.
Right.
There's this big picture thing, and none of us have all the pieces. We have some of them, and we're trying to figure out what the big picture is supposed to be, and that's our great adventure. Our great adventure is discovering what this picture is supposed to be, and no one is going to tell us, and we don't always know while we're in the process where, what the right thing is. So we have to kind of seek it out. We've got to deal with disagreements. We've all got to give. Everybody lost a pet part on this record.
Right.
The second draft I had kind of worked on my own. Let's see, you want me to walk you through the process. So the first part of the process for me was I had a couple little pieces. I had Vanity Fair and I think another song called Talking that was one of the pieces that got cut kind of towards the end. I had a couple pieces that I thought, this looks like it would be a follow-up to Similitude. Vanity Fair is one of the places where they go in the Pilgrim's Progress book.
Right.
So I had that really early, like that came out of me somewhere in the Similitude tour, like in the spring of that year. And then so we got together in January without Mike. Mike couldn't make it, because he's probably the busiest of all of us. And we wrote and sketched out like 4 or 5 pieces. One was Vanity Fair, and then there was the other, like The Clock is Ticking, some of the stuff that would wind up being part of I've Got to Run.
Okay. And
Dark Melody, I think, were there. So there was these January of 2017, was it? 2017? I can't remember. Yeah, it would have been 2017, yeah. And so we came away from that with like 4 or 5 bits. And then in January, we got together to make the album. So in January of 2018, the 5 of us got together here in Nashville, and we took those pieces and some other bits that I had written and worked on in December, and some other bits that Eric and Bill and Randy had brought in. Mike is really I always call him the gleaner. He's the guy that kind of listens to everybody's stuff and picks out the best parts, and he puts them all like kind of on a dry erase board, and then we try to figure out how to get from part to part and what parts we really love and what parts we can do without. So we did that in January, and we made a single disc version of this album.
Okay.
There's an entire version of this album without completed lyrics. That's a single disc thing that has almost all of these same parts. But then I came away from that. That was supposed to be the album. It was going to be this single disc album, not a concept. But as I listened to it and I came away from it, like in February, I started to feel like it just wasn't what it was supposed to be. I can't really explain it. It's just kind of a gut feeling.
Right.
That it really wasn't quite what it was supposed to be. Mike was supposed to come back in March and do all his keeper drums, and he really wanted to do that. And I had to kind of drop the bomb and tell everybody, I'm not, and this is the first time this has ever happened. This is all unprecedented stuff. I don't think Mike and I have ever worked on a record where we basically completed it and then stepped away from it, and one of us said, I don't think it's quite there. We need to work on it again. I mean, it's just never happened before.
Right.
But it did this time, and so I said, I don't think you should come and do the drums in March. I think this needs a little more time. Let's think about it. Let's pray about it. I'm gonna, in between my Life and Times dates, I'm gonna come home and see if I can find it. We're in search of it. And so, yeah, in search of, man.
Right.
And, so I came home on my breaks and took the master. If it would have been tape, I would have been slicing it up, but it was in the computer. So I was, slicing it up in the computer, and kind of, I rewrote and wrote another bunch of stuff. I put Vanity Fair back in. I put Talking in also. So there is a 2.5 hour version of this record that I was just creating, just throwing stuff against the wall. That version I did on my own in the spring of 2018, and then I presented it to the band, which had said, the band had said, really, we don't really want to do a double concept. We don't want to do that.
It's a big undertaking.
Yeah, well, they just felt like it wasn't the right time. They thought it would be better. And I kind of did too. I mean, I saw their point. I thought it'd be better to do just a standalone, regular sort of prog record. And I wasn't opposed. I just didn't feel like that's what this wanted to be,
Right.
So I around April or May, I think it was April, I submitted this 2.5 hour possibility. And it really got a good response from the band. The band was surprisingly yeah, we're into it. When can we work on it?
Wow.
So that means we all had to fly back to Nashville to take this version and tweak it, cut and paste it, and figure out how to fit it all together, because it still wasn't there. I still didn't feel like that version was I didn't, like I said before, I never got to the point where I felt like I could step back from the canvas and go, okay, done. I didn't feel that way until I got the last set of mixes from Rich.
Really?
Yeah. I was still feeling I don't know, maybe we should cut out this part. I was still just kind of still creating in my mind. And I'll tell you, Rich brought a lot to the table too. I mean, everybody in the band brings a lot to the table, but Rich Mauser, if you listen to the roughs of this album, you listen to his mixes and all that, he just brings it to life. I mean, it's really amazing. So that's kind of, I know that's kind of a crazy story, but every album's different, and that's how this one went down.
Yeah, and that's another thing I was gonna mention a little later on, but I might as well bring it up now. Is that the sound is just huge. It's just such a beautifully produced album that I felt like I was on a great adventure while listening to it. I'm sure that was the point, but
that's great, man, great.
It's absolutely fantastic sonically, yeah. But that you mentioned something before that you never are happy with it until you hear it. But does that ever stop? Like even after you've heard it, do you hear things that you could say, yeah, I could have done something different there, or I could have added something here?
Oh yeah.
Never ends.
Totally. Oh, totally. Yeah. In fact, I'm starting to rehearse for the tour, so I'm listening. I was just listening to The Great Despair, and like when sometimes you find this magic when you're tracking stuff. Like when I was tracking, I was playing I did the slide lead guitar stuff on The Great Despair, and like I just loved. I don't know what it was. Like I accidentally had the Echoplex up too loud or something. There was like all this really cool delay on it, and I was just listening to it going, man, that slide just doesn't have the magic it did when I tracked it.
It's just one of those things, right? You can't get it back.
It's one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kept telling Rich, hey, turn up the delay on the slide, turn up the delay on the slide. And finally you're just like, oh, well, it sounds cool. You just kind of, you have to let things go. You really do. I mean, it sounds great.
It does.
It does. And you just, everybody had to let a lot of things go, on this record. I could tell you a bunch of things that people were just, oh, no, I love that part. And there were whole songs that we really loved, each one of us, that whole sections that just didn't make it. You have to recognize that the film is better without that scene, even though you like the scene.
Sure.
The whole, it's not needed for the whole big picture, and it's a challenge, man. You got to stay unattached.
I can imagine a challenge. Yeah. You mentioned earlier about Mike Portnoy being the busiest guy in the business. You're right up there too. I mean, you guys have released 3 albums in 4 years, along with the other stuff you're doing. But Neal Morse albums, 3 in 4 years, that's incredibly rare these days. What's your secret? I mean, why are you doing all these albums when other bands are releasing an album every 7, 8, 9 years?
I don't know. Honestly, I love music. I love writing. I could do more. Honestly, like over the Christmas season, I wrote like 5 Christmas songs that I really, really like. If all I was doing was composing, I don't know. I could probably I really could put out an album probably every 4 or 5 months. I mean,
really?
if there was a desire for it, yeah, it was sure. If all I was doing was music, if there wasn't any I do a lot of other stuff. I do a lot of business things. I'm also a leader in a local church, so I'm doing a lot of church things. If all I did was compose and, write songs and record them, and, you can do a lot. Human beings are capable of a lot, actually. Sometimes I feel like we put limitations on ourselves, and we could produce a lot more if we were just free and creating.
True, for sure. And you're also working on a new album with Flying Colors, I heard.
Right, that's right, yeah.
And Transatlantic, I heard as well.
Well, Transatlantic is just being discussed. It has not been solidified.
Okay.
In fact, we need to talk to those guys, see if we can solidify that. Yeah, I'd like to make a new Transatlantic and, have it come out sometime in 2020 would be the idea.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this tour coming up. I mean, it's a pretty big tour. I'm up in Canada, so I know you're doing 3 shows up here. Montreal, Quebec City, and Toronto. What can fans expect from this tour? Because, if you play the album from start to finish, you've got yourself a set list.
Yeah. Yeah, we are planning to play the entire album and then have an encore. That is the current plan.
That's quite the undertaking.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
it's going to be great. I mean, the Similitude tour was it just delivered every night. I mean, I was kind of, I feel like I got kind of spoiled by the Similitude tour because it was just so powerful every night. It's almost like the piece itself just worked every time, and you didn't have to try to make show or try to make anything happen.
Just a connection with the crowd.
Yeah, I felt like in a way you could kind of just relax and play the piece,
Yeah.
And it just, people were just crying and cheering at the end every night. It was just so moving and, everything that you'd want in a concert. And I think that The Great Adventure is going to be the same thing.
Now, how are you going to do this, though? Because when I listen to the album, there's definitely more than 5 parts,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How do you plan on recreating this live?
Well, it won't be it's not going to sound like the record. It won't be as full. We're not going to be able to do everything, for sure. I mean, there's times when there's lots of layers and tambourine and timpani and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
But that's okay. Most bands are like that. I don't really like it when I don't know, when I see bands and you see 4 guys on stage and you hear like all this stuff. You hear this orchestra and all these background vocals and all, and the drummer's wearing headphones and you are like, oh, okay, well, half of this stuff is being triggered or they're playing to tracks essentially.
Right.
Most modern audiences, I suppose, don't care or don't know, and it doesn't matter to them. I don't think it matters to the younger generation that much. But it does to me, so we're going to keep it pretty real. We will trigger some stuff, of course, but we'll do the best we can to fill it out, and it's going to be awesome.
Well, you've got 5 pretty talented dudes up there. I'm sure it'll work out fine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the live experience, the live energy will take care of a lot.
Oh, for sure.
Too.
For sure. Can we talk about this Portnoy guy for a while? He's pretty good.
Sure.
I had the pleasure of interviewing him when he had just released Sons of Apollo and got to see him live in Montreal. I think it's at the same place you're playing as well.
Okay.
This guy is, like you said, the busiest guy going. How did this thing all start? You've been in what? Transatlantic, your band, Yellow Matter Custer, Flying Colors with this guy. How did this partnership get going?
Well, honestly, it started with him. We had a mutual friend, and in the 90s, he was talking up my band, Spock's Beard, like crazy. Like I was reading, people were sending me interviews of his where he was just, seemed like almost like he was talking about Spock's Beard more than he was talking about Dream Theater. I mean, it was amazing.
Actually, that's how I found out about you, is because in that interview he mentioned Spock's Beard. And I had never heard
is that
of
right?
Spock's Beard, so I went and checked it out, and I was like, wow, this is good stuff. So yeah, he's responsible for all this.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that have that same story. That's pretty amazing. So yeah, he called me and basically said, "Hey, I'm thinking about having this side project with Jim Mattheos from Fate's Warning, and I'd like to do a side project band with you." And eventually, that's what became Jim Mattheos. For some reason, it didn't work out with him, and so I suggested Royna Stolt. And Mike suggested Pete, and we met in the lobby of the first time I actually met Mike physically was in the lobby of the studio where we recorded the first Transatlantic album.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. And you've done a lot of stuff together. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's just grown. You know, our friendship and our musical relationship has just grown, and I'm just so blessed to have him as a friend and collaborator.
He's an absolute beast on the drums. He's fantastic. Prog rock seems to be, doing all right these days. There's your new album, Sons of Apollo, Dream Theater. There's a bunch of bands. What are your thoughts on the state of prog?
Yeah, it seems like it's doing great. I mean, the prog cruises are doing really well, and I'm just thankful that there's people that care about music like the prog fans do. It's such a blessing. We have this thing every year. We've been having a festival here in Nashville called Morse Fest, and it's a time where you really get to hang out more and get to know some of the fans and things. And I'm just always amazed at how kind almost all the prog fans seem to be, just really kind people, and they really care about the music, and their hearts are in the right place. It's not a fashion show.
Yep.
It's not any kind of flash in the pan thing. It's a deep heart thing, and I love that, because that's what music is to me as well. So we're the same.
And one last question, and this is because I'm a mediocre guitar player, but I love the instrument. You've played with some of the best guitar players in the world. I'll just name a couple, like Steve Morse, Paul Gilbert. I just wanted to throw this out there. Eric Gillette, the guitar solo on Dark Melody, just pat him on the back for that one for me, would you?
Yeah, I sure will.
That is absolutely mind-boggling what he's doing in that song.
Yeah, it's great. He's great. He's just growing, and he plays drums on my new Jesus Christ the Exorcist musical that's coming out in the spring.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Eric's playing drums on that, and it's killer.
Wow.
Yeah, Ted Leonard from Spock's Beard is singing the role of Jesus, and Nick DeVirgilio is singing the role of Judas, and it's great. Yeah, Eric's an incredible singer and a great writer, and growing as a guitar player. He's also an amazing keyboard player. I mean, he's one of the most accomplished musicians I've ever been around.
Is there a different kind of approach when you work with different guitar players? Like, let's say, working with Steve Morse and Eric Gillette, is there a different approach that you have to take to fit in with what they're doing?
Yeah, oh yeah. Every band, every cup of soup is unique and has its own ingredients. Steve Morse and Eric Gillette are really unique, different guys to work with. I'll just say that. I mean, they're just really, yeah. I mean, it's not like I adjust. It's just you interact with everyone in their own unique way,
Right.
And it's really exciting and challenging, It's just to rise up to their level.
The new album comes out on January 25th?
Right, that's right.
Right, okay. And you start the tour like a week later?
Yep. Well, yeah, we're hitting the ground running, man.
No kidding. Well, congratulations on an absolutely fantastic album. Guaranteed to be a success.
Thanks so much, man. Thank you.
Right, and thanks so much for taking the time. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Great. All right, man. Well, hope to see you at the gigs.
Hope so.
All right, you take care now.